What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Myles of Horror, the only channel that's going to make you scream. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Today is a fun one, guys. I have finished, Goosebumps, The Vanishing. I powered through from Friday night to now, 8 episodes, and I powered through and I finished all 8. And I want to give you my thoughts, and I hate to say it, guys, but I told you so, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But before we do anything, if you could hit that like button, please subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate it. Definitely go back and check out my video from yesterday, a little bit of this or that, talking to you guys about what you prefer in your collection, or go take a look at my other videos, talking about all things physical media and movies and horror and all that good stuff. So, happy Sunday. Happy NFL playoffs if your team's still in it. I know big Broncos Bills game going on right now. But anyway, let's get into Goosebumps because we have season 2 just came out Friday night, and this has been you know what, pretty anticipated from a lot of Goosebumps fans simply because I think the first season was kind of a dud for a lot of people, myself included. I was vehemently against the first season. I thought it was terrible, strongly disliked it. But at least it had Slappy. You know, that's one thing that I will say. And Slappy was kind of cool in that show for the most part. So I'll give it credit for that. It had Slappy, and that still felt Goosebumpsy enough to me. But that was about the extent of how Goosebumps felt in that first season. And now enter season 2. And again, guys, I hate to say it, but I told you so. I had a feeling this is going to be a shitty disaster, and it's exactly what it was. And I will tell you my reasons and everything in between right now. But first, right off the bat, there's we had 8 episodes, right? So each episode was loosely based off of one of the books. And so here are the episode titles. Okay, so episodes 1 and 2 were "Stay Out of the Basement."
Stay out of the basement!
Which was a cool premise. Okay, I like the idea that where they were going with this, and I think in leading up to the show and leading up to actually watching it, I was hooked on that premise because it's such a good book. That I think the idea of doing, kind of the series around that premise is a really cool concept. But it didn't work, and I'll tell you why. Then episode 3 was the haunted car. Episode 4 was Monster Blood, which I believe was like changed, if I'm not mistaken, from the blob that ate everyone. So like that just tells you right there, like how big of a joke this was, is that they were interchanging titles for these episodes on the reg. Um, Episode 5 was The Boy Who Cried Monster. It's a take on The Girl Who Cried Monster. Then you have The Ghost Next Door, episode 6. Episode 7 was Welcome to Camp Nightmare, which I'm going to get into, was an absolute fucking joke. And I cannot believe they even called it that. And then episode 8 was just titled Episode 8, which they didn't even try on that one. It's like they gave up because, I'll just tell you right now, the finale episode 8 was one of the single biggest pieces of garbage I've ever seen in my life. I can't even believe that's how they ended the show. But anyway, so right off the bat, right, guys? So story-wise, the season makes kind of more sense than the original. Season 1 had an absurd amount of stupidity, is in my opinion, an absurd amount of plot holes. But here's the honest truth, right? 8 Goosebumps books, or 7 rather in this case, and then episode 8, they're just not meant to be together. Okay, they're just not. That you can't. It's like the movies did a good job of creating one universe, but they're not supposed to be like stringed together in episodic ways like this. It's not easy to string all of these together into one storyline. It's instead of like being one, massive story together, this is just like a mess. Like the both movies did it way better than either of these shows. But that's beside the fact because no one even wants this. Everyone just wants another anthology series where you're doing one book at a time. And like, I don't understand why that's so hard to do. Get good actors, get modern technology, get new CGI, and just do the books. Just do the books. It's really not that hard. But I guess like that's what the Goosebumps, you know, the true fans want, like me, but I guess like the majority of fans don't give a shit. But I guess me, I'm like a real Goosebumps fan. So I'm here. I'm at 38, and so it's just not what I want. And so I guess they're trying to appeal to young kids and whatever. I guess. But 8 Goosebumps or 7 Goosebumps books are not meant to be together in a episodic show like this. Okay, it's another jumbled mess that is kind of cool in theory, but not in practice. Okay, the heart of these books, guys, the heart of them, and the heart of Goosebumps in general is just completely void. It's just a show with fun overarching things that are loosely tied to Goosebumps titles. Okay, it's not even necessarily tied to the stories themselves because the majority of these episodes are like tied to the titles because they use the name Hannah for the ghost next door. Like that's about it. It's like we're gonna call this the ghost next door. Use a character named Hannah, and like that will be our Ghost Next Door episode. So like it's not even like Goosebumps in theory or even in like practice or like simple basics. It's literally in title alone and maybe like a character name. There's no real semblance of Goosebumps anywhere outside of the show's name or the book title of episodes. And that was the case with the first one and a large reason why this show just fails on so many levels. I will say this, guys. Listen, I'm gonna talk about the show in detail. I'm gonna do my best not to spoil too much. But listen, if you haven't watched yet and you really want to know nothing about it, look away now. It's all good. I won't take it personally. But once you do watch it, come back and hang out and come hear my thoughts. So the biggest issue, guys, that these episodes are they're not about the books. Okay. These episodes take one small part of each book concept. They add it to this hodgepodge of a show and they call it Goosebumps. Sad of the Basement had plants with a padlocked door, but zero actual concept of Sad of the Basement. Like Monster Blood had a giant blob trying to eat people, but zero concept of a small, unknown green goo that seems to be kind of cool at first to the kids and starts growing and growing. You miss all of that. None of that's in it. It's just like what's a small little thing we could take from this book to call it the book title. In the first 2 episodes, Stay Out of the Basement, the whole magic of the original book is that they're forbidden to go into the basement. They don't know what's down there. They don't know why their dad's acting so weird. And that's the whole premise of the book. And it's them that trying to navigate this situation where their dad's acting weird and there's something down there they don't really know. And their dad's acting different. And the first 2 episodes, there's things going on, but like it has nothing to do what's in the basement. Whatever happens is again, spoiler alert here. It comes from outside the basement. And to be honest, I'm still not even sure like how whatever it is that ends up being in the basement at one point plays into the rest of the show. Like I still don't get it. Like it doesn't really make sense to me. The only real reason why he wants them to stay out of the basement is because he has like sensitive glass down there and he doesn't want an accident to happen where like they could break something and he has research. It has nothing to do with what's down there. Like the whole issue when the what is actually the monsters are again, here's a big spoiler, so look away if you don't want to hear it, but it's actually like the monster, the alien that is in play here does not come from the basement at all. um it's like they took everything that was good and sacred and the good scares from these books and they made them into these generic storylines with less than zero substance. Okay. Stay Out of the Basement just became a random story about a botanist with sensitive glass in his basement. That's it. It wasn't about staying out of the basement, which is what the book was all about. Kids who were afraid to go down there. They didn't know what their dad was up to. It had nothing along those lines. Okay. The other thing is like one of the most important rules of writing is show, don't tell. Okay, this show is a giant garbled mess of just telling and not showing at all. The writing was abysmal. It was really bad. I think it was even worse than the first one, which is like I can't even fathom because the first writing was so bad, and I thought the finale of season one was a joke. The finale of season two was even worse. I can't even like believe that this is what they put out. Um, Anyway, so that's kind of the crux with episodes 1 and 2. Ghost Car episode 3, I never read the book. I think it's one of the 2000s, so I don't really know about that one. I can't really speak on it, but I thought that was the weakest episode, one of the weakest episodes of the show. There's a character Trey that kind of gets monstified a little bit in that episode, and I thought that was kind of cool. Um, but episode 4 is Monster Blood. Now, the biggest issue. Okay. Monster blood is about a small goo that keeps growing and can't be stopped. And there's a fear in that. And in this, it's a small bit of plant matter that gets in a kombucha cup that Cece pukes up and is instantly turned into a giant blob for no reason at all. It's like we're just going to call this monster blood, but has nothing to do with the actual original concept of the book. Episode 5, The Boy Who Cried Monster, which again, the original book is The Girl Who Cried Monster, which has to do with Lucy, who goes to the library, and sees her librarian as a monster. And the original book is iconic, and the original episode is iconic. Maybe my favorite episode of the original series. And it's all about a girl who's isolated and turns to books to help her. And the one person she confides in and relates to is Mortman. Okay, and Mortman ends up being actually a monster, and it's soul crushing to her, and she has no one to turn to. Her parents don't believe her. Her brother, doesn't believe her, and so that was the heart and soul of that episode, and the heart and soul of Goosebumps in general. And this episode, guys, The Boy Who Cried Monster, is a random encounter with David Schwimmer, where his eye pops out because because of the plant matter that somehow made his way inside him. That is the crux of why this episode's called The Boy Who Cried Monster. And the boy is a delivery boy who's kind of a character in the show, and he shows up at David Schwimmer's house, and David Schwimmer turns around and his eye pops out. And it's kind of a cool like visual, but that's the crux of why this episode's called The Boy Who Cried Monster. No, at no point, and nothing else is related to the episode or book in this episode. So like that to me is just so, like I knew it was going to be like that. And it's a cash grab, and it is they're playing on the Goosebumps fans to watch and all this shit, but it is not Goosebumps, guys. This has nothing to do with the original books and the original scares, because the isolation factor and all the heart of these books is void, completely void and gone. Episode 6, The Ghost Next Door, the whole premise that you don't know the girl, his neighbor in the book is really a ghost the whole time. Okay. And again, this episode is not about a ghost next door at all. It's just a random kind of ghost that shows up from 1994 from the original, crew that is missing. And I guess you could, just because there's a ghost, they call it the ghost next door. But this ghost is not next door. This ghost did not befriend any of them throughout the season. It's like a random encounter in the park that makes no sense. There's no reason why she should be there. It's a garbled mess. Like it has nothing, no heart and soul. There's nothing to do with the original book. They just inserted the ghost just so they can call an episode "The Ghost Next Door" and input stuff all around it. It's really a joke, and it makes no sense, and I hated it. I thought it was so bad, and the more I think about it, I hate it even more. But the biggest folly, okay, in my opinion, this is the biggest problem episode and the biggest joke, and why I feel a little insulted as a Goosebumps fan was the episode titled Camp Nightmare. Okay, now I let me explain to you why I feel insulted. Okay, and I'm not using that word loosely. I feel insulted that they called this A, Goosebumps, and B, Welcome to Camp Nightmare. Okay, the honest truth is that there was a camp in the book or in the episode called Camp Night Moon, and there was a shitty counselor involved, but there was zero reason for a camp to be placed into the show. It was a very stupid insert for purposes of the title, Welcome to Camp Nightmare. I think that's the crux of the whole episode. Like they put it in. It's like there's like 5 minutes of like a little inserted scene about a camp with a counselor who ends up being one of the specimens, but it has nothing to do with the show. There's no reason why a camp should have been involved in this show at all. There's a couple lines throughout the series where they say, "Oh, the camp was underneath this lad." Makes no sense. It's like they decided. It's like they wrote a show and they're like, "Where can we fit Goosebumps titles into this series?" Same thing with the first one, same thing with the second one, but at least the first one had Slappy like throughout, and that kept it kind of goosebumpsy. This one sucked, guys. There was nothing goosebumps in it. Maybe the goosebumpsy in it. Maybe the you can consider the plants, but outside of that, like I would say, even Monster Blood was more like the Blob, the '80s, the Blob, or the '50s original Blob than any Goosebump book. And guys, don't get me started on the finale. I said before, there's no real way to bring all 8 of these concepts or 7 of these concepts together for an ending that makes any sense. Um, so it becomes another garbled mess. And to be honest, I was on my phone for half the episode because I couldn't even believe that I was watching something this bad. And I strongly disliked it. And so, listen, I cannot fathom how bad it was. I think it was worse than the first season. I really wanted to like it. I wanted to be wrong, but I hate to say it. I told you so, guys. I said it many times. People were like hitting me up and like, they were like, dude, you excited for the new Goosebumps? And I said, every time I said, no, I'm not. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible. And it was even worse than I thought it would be. It almost felt like Stranger Things. Like they were trying to do Stranger Things, but with Goosebumps titles. It was dumb. I hated it. Sorry to be negative. I know it's not my normal style, but it was a big hot mess, a big piece of garbo. Let me know what you guys think. I'm very curious to know other thoughts on this. I have not read anything about it. I have not watched anything about it. I know the guys over at the Goosebumps Crew podcast did something. I'm gonna check that out. I literally finished like 10 minutes ago, and I came right on here. So, hit me up in the comments if you've watched, guys. Let me know what you think. I look forward to talking about this with you guys because if you liked it, I want to know why. What was it about this series that you liked? Because it sucked. I thought it was absolute complete garbage. I'm not saying you don't have the right to think what you want. You totally do. But in my opinion, it sucked ass. I hated it. So hit me up in the comments. Let's chat Goosebumps, guys. And appreciate you guys hanging out. Hit that like button. And if you're not already subscribed, please do so. And I'll catch you guys on the flip. Peace.